When someone stops loving you, they don't always say it out loud. In fact, they rarely do. There's no dramatic moment, no slammed doors, no speeches. What usually happens is something far more quiet. And because it's quiet, it's easy to miss. One day, you're going through your normal routine. You're making coffee, folding the laundry, watching a show together like you always have. But something feels off. Something's changed, and you can't quite put your finger on it. Maybe they don't ask you how you slept anymore. Maybe they barely look up when you speak. Maybe it feels like you're sitting beside someone who used to know you deeply, but now just kind of exists next to you. This video isn't about blame. It's not about making you feel like you did something wrong. It's about helping you see clearly. Because clarity can be a kind of comfort. When we understand what's really going on, we stop spinning in circles trying to guess. And if you've ever found yourself lying in bed at night, wondering if it's just your imagination, wondering if you're the only one feeling the distance, then this is for you. We're going to talk about 5 quiet signs that love is fading. Not loud arguments or big fights, just the subtle ways people begin to pull away. And as we go through each one, I want you to listen with your heart as much as your mind. If something I say feels familiar, if a certain part makes your chest tighten a little, then trust that feeling. It's trying to tell you something. By the end of this, you'll have a better understanding of whether what you're feeling is real. And more importantly, you'll have a better understanding of what you need, not just from them, but from yourself. And before we dive in, I want to ask you something simple. Have you ever felt like someone you love slowly stopped seeing you? If that question speaks to you, even just a little, I'd love to hear about it in the comments. You don't have to tell your whole story. Just let me know you're here, listening, and feeling something. You'd be surprised how many people are quietly going through the same thing. Let's start by looking at the first sign. And remember, this isn't about pointing fingers. It's about paying attention, because you deserve to know when something real is changing. 1. Loss of curiosity. One of the first signs that someone may no longer love you, or has started to drift away emotionally, is when they stop being curious about you. And I don't mean the big things. I'm talking about the small, everyday pieces of your life. The ones that used to matter. The ones they used to ask about. You know what I mean? Maybe they used to ask how your back was feeling after you worked in the yard. Maybe they'd remember you had a doctor's appointment and ask how it went. Or maybe they just asked what the grandkids are up to, and genuinely listened when you answered. Those kinds of questions come from a place of love. They come from someone who's still leaning in. Someone who still wants to be part of your world. But when that curiosity fades, the conversations start to dry up. You might tell them something, and instead of a question or even a nod, you get a grunt. Or no response at all. They don't follow up. They don't ask how something turned out. And you feel it not all at once, but like a slow drifting. The kind where you wonder, did they even hear me? Now, don't get me wrong. Life gets busy. People get tired. We all zone out sometimes. But this is different. This is when the pattern changes. When it's no longer a one-off moment, but a new normal. When you realize that you've started keeping things to yourself, not because you want to, but because it doesn't seem to matter to them anymore. And here's the hard truth. People don't stop being curious because you became boring. They stop because their emotional investment has shifted. That might feel like a punch to the gut, but it's not your fault. It's not about your stories or your habits or your interests. It's about what's going on inside them. Somewhere along the way, they've started stepping back. And you feel it, don't you? You feel the difference between someone who's listening and someone who's just waiting for you to stop talking. That kind of silence, the kind that isn't peaceful but heavy, it can be lonelier than being alone. So if you've noticed that your conversations feel one-sided, if you catch yourself second-guessing whether to bring something up, because you're not sure they'll care, then it's time to ask yourself a painful but honest question. When did they stop being curious about me? Because when someone really loves you, they care about the little things. They remember what matters to you. They want to stay connected. And when that starts to fade, it doesn't always show up in words. It shows up in what they stop asking. 2. Patience turns into irritation. There comes a time, sometimes so gradually you hardly notice it, when the patience that once lived in a relationship starts to wear thin. And not because you've changed or started asking for more, but because something inside them has shifted. Where there used to be softness, there's now tension. Where there used to be understanding, there's irritation. And it hurts, especially when it's coming from someone who used to handle your flaws with kindness. If you've been with someone for a long time, 20, 30, even 50 years, you know what it means to live through each other's quirks. You learn how they forget where they put things. You know how they can talk in circles. You know they need reminding sometimes. And usually you don't mind because you love them. That's what love does. It makes space for imperfections. It doesn't snap over small things. But when love starts to fade, patience is often the first thread that unravels. Maybe now when you forget something, you're met with a sigh. Or a sharp, "You already told me that." Or they roll their eyes when you ask for help logging into the computer, as if you should have known how to do it by now. It's not just the words they say, it's the tone. Cold, short, dismissive. You feel like a bother, not a partner. And what makes this harder is the confusion that comes with it. You start to ask yourself, am I too much now? Was I always this difficult? You begin to walk on eggshells, afraid that the smallest thing might set them off, even when all you're asking for is something they never used to mind. You might remember a time when they used to help you search for your glasses, not because they had to, but because they cared. Or when they'd laugh gently when you repeated a story, not correct you or ignore you. That care was real. That patience came from love. And now, without warning, it's gone. And no, this isn't about someone having a bad day or being in a grumpy mood. That happens to all of us. This is about a change in how they treat you over time. A steady drip of frustration, like you're slowly becoming someone they don't want to take care of anymore. And that's the part that stings. Because patience isn't just about kindness. It's a sign that someone is still choosing you, even in your forgetful, tired, human moments. If you've started noticing that you feel like a burden just for being yourself, if the things that used to be forgiven are now being used against you, that's not just moodiness. That's emotional distance. And the sad truth is, when someone's heart starts to pull away, their patience often walks out right behind it. But here's what I want you to hear clearly. You are not too much. You are not a burden. You are worthy of love that makes space for your humanness, just like you've done for them. 3. Lack of time together. There's a certain kind of loneliness that only shows up when someone you live with starts drifting away. Not with words, not with arguments, but simply by no longer showing up. Not physically, perhaps. They may still live under the same roof, sit in the same room. But they're not really there. You feel it in the silence. In the empty chair during your favorite TV show. In the way you sit at the table drinking your morning coffee alone. Again. Time is one of the clearest ways people show they care. Especially when you've been in a long-term relationship. You don't need grand gestures or fancy dinners. Sometimes, just sitting quietly side by side while you read or work on a puzzle is enough. Those little pockets of time, those simple moments, they're what love looks like after all the noise fades. But when love starts to thin out, so does the time. They might stop sitting with you during your programs. They might go off into another room without saying much. Maybe they suddenly get busy with errands, spend more time out of the house, or retreat into their phone or computer when they're home. And when you ask if they want to do something, even something small, the answer is often you go ahead or I'm tired, again and again, and you start to feel like a ghost in your own home. At first, you might try to be understanding. They're tired. They need space. But over time, you start to realize it's not about being tired. It's about not wanting to be with you the way they used to. And that realization, that hits deep. Because love doesn't disappear all at once. It fades by way of skipped dinners, shortened conversations, and walks that used to happen together but now happen alone. And slowly, you stop asking. You stop inviting them to do things. Not because you don't want to, but because you already know the answer. Let's be clear. Everyone needs alone time now and then. But in a relationship, if that alone time turns into a lifestyle, if it feels like you're living separate lives under the same roof, that's no longer space. That's separation. And here's something important. When someone wants to spend time with you, they make time. They look forward to sitting down with you, even in silence. They join you for the little things, not out of obligation but out of affection. And when that stops, when you're always the one asking, always the one hoping for company, it's okay to admit something's wrong. You're not needy for wanting connection. You're human. And after everything you've given, everything you've shared, you deserve to be someone's chosen person, not just someone they pass by on the way to something else. So if you're constantly finding yourself alone, not just physically but emotionally, ask yourself, when did we stop choosing to spend time together? And why does it feel like I'm the only one who notices? For emotional withholding. There's something uniquely painful about sitting next to someone you've shared your life with, decades maybe, and realizing you no longer really know what's going on inside them. You still talk, yes. You say good morning, you mention the weather, maybe you ask what they want for dinner. But the deeper things, the feelings, the thoughts that used to come pouring out after a hard day or during a quiet evening on the porch, they're just gone. That's what emotional withholding looks like. When someone starts to fall out of love, they don't always leave. They stay, but they start to close off. Bit by bit, they stop letting you into their world. They don't talk about what's worrying them. They don't share their hopes or frustrations like they used to. If something upsetting happens, a health scare, an issue with family, something big or small, you might hear about it late, or not at all. And if you ask what's wrong, they'll say things like, it's fine, or don't worry about it. But you can feel it, that wall that wasn't there before. What's hard is that they might still seem kind. They'll still fix you a cup of tea. They might even sit next to you on the couch. But that warm, emotional presence, that sense that they trust you with their thoughts, their inner life, it's missing, and you can't quite put your finger on when it started. But suddenly, you're not the one they go to anymore, you're the one they go around. Think back. Maybe they used to vent to you about their job, their friends, their worries. Maybe you were the person they leaned on when things got tough. And now, you're not sure what's going on in their head. You find out important things late. You ask questions and get clipped answers. And you start wondering if you've become a stranger to someone you used to feel so close to. And here's the truth no one likes to say out loud. When someone stops letting you in, it's often because they've already started pulling away. Emotionally, mentally. Sometimes, they've even convinced themselves that keeping you out is doing you a favor. I don't want to burden you, they'll say. But the real reason is that the connection, the trust, the vulnerability, it's no longer something they feel safe or willing to share. And maybe you've felt it but pushed it down. You've told yourself not to be too sensitive. You've reminded yourself that people change as they get older. That men get quiet. That women sometimes keep more to themselves. But deep down, you know the difference between peaceful silence and emotional absence. So if you find yourself feeling like a roommate instead of a partner, if the conversations feel shallow, and your attempts to go deeper are quietly avoided, it might be time to ask yourself not just what's changed, but why they stopped turning to you. Because you deserve connection, not just cohabitation. You deserve to be someone's safe place, not just someone who happens to be there. 5. Physical distance. When emotional closeness begins to disappear, the body often follows, quietly, slowly, and with a kind of distance that's hard to name at first. But you feel it, in your bones, in the space between you on the couch, in the way their hand used to reach for yours and now doesn't. We're not just talking about intimacy or romantic touch. That's part of it, yes, but physical closeness goes far beyond that. It's the warmth of a hand on your shoulder, a gentle rub on your back while you're washing dishes, a quick kiss before bed, sitting side by side and feeling simply safe, like you belong to one another. But when love starts fading, that kind of physical presence fades with it. Suddenly, they don't touch you the way they used to. Hugs become shorter or forced. Kisses become rare. Their body turns away in bed instead of curling toward you. They stop reaching for your hand when you're walking side by side. And worse, when you reach for them, you start to notice the subtle flinch, the delayed reaction, the way they seem to lean away instead of into you. And listen, in long-term relationships, we all go through phases. Bodies age, energy shifts, life brings stress. But this is something different. This is not about physical limitation, it's about emotional absence that now lives in the body too. It's about feeling like you're sleeping next to someone who's no longer with you. Not truly. Maybe you've even stopped reaching out yourself. Not because you don't want to, but because the rejection, even in its softest form, has made you question whether you're still wanted. That kind of silence, that kind of space between bodies, cuts deep. Because physical touch is a language. It's how we say, I see you. I still choose you. I'm here. When that touch disappears, it's like the relationship is trying to whisper something the lips won't say. I'm not connected anymore. I'm not feeling it anymore. And when you feel that every day, when a goodnight kiss feels like a duty instead of affection, it becomes harder and harder not to take that silence personally. Let me say this clearly. You're not wrong for noticing the change. You're not imagining it. And you're not being dramatic for feeling heartbroken over something as simple as touch. Because it's not simple. For many of us, especially in our later years, physical presence is one of the most powerful ways we feel close. It tells us we're still loved, still needed, still chosen. So if the warmth is gone, if the comfort is missing, if your hugs feel more like politeness than connection, that's not something to brush aside. That's something to feel and to honor. Because the body knows even before the mind admits it. When someone stops loving you, the first goodbye is often in the way they stop reaching for you. And you deserve to be held. Fully. Freely. Not because you asked for it, but because someone wants to. Not just out of habit, but out of love. Sometimes, in the midst of everything, it's hard to pause and really listen to what's going on inside. But taking a moment to reflect on your relationship is one of the most powerful things you can do for yourself. It doesn't mean you're making any rash decisions. It simply means you're giving yourself the space to notice how things truly feel. Ask yourself, softly and without judgment, do I still feel emotionally safe here? Safety in a relationship is so much more than just physical presence. It's about trust, comfort, and feeling seen. Do you feel like you can be your true self without fear of rejection or criticism? Or do you feel like you're walking on eggshells, always second-guessing your words or actions? That emotional safety is the foundation of any strong, healthy bond, and if you're starting to feel that it's slipping, it's important to acknowledge it. Another question to consider is, do I feel chosen or just tolerated? The subtle but powerful. Being chosen means someone actively wants to be with you, chooses to put in the effort, and shows love consistently. Being tolerated, on the other hand, can feel like an afterthought, as if you're just there, but not fully seen or valued. This is a painful realization for many, but it's an essential one. You deserve to be loved, to be truly chosen, not just tolerated. And remember, these reflections are not about blame or guilt. They're about awareness and honesty. So, give yourself permission to reflect without feeling guilty. This is not about criticizing yourself or your partner. It's about being kind enough to acknowledge the truth and the space you need for growth, whether that means making changes or simply understanding where you stand. Allow yourself the grace to reflect without judgment. Relationships can be complex, and love isn't always simple. However, it's always important to reflect on how we feel, what we need, and what we truly deserve in a relationship. I hope today's conversation has given you some clarity about the signs of fading love, and perhaps has helped you understand the steps you can take to improve your bond or make more mindful choices moving forward. I'd love to hear from you. Which signs stood out to you today? Maybe something resonated with you, or maybe you recognized a part of yourself in one of the reflections. Whatever it is, I encourage you to share your thoughts in the comments. It's always comforting to know that we're not alone on this journey, and sometimes the strength lies in connecting with others who understand. If you've enjoyed this reflection and want to continue exploring gentle, insightful wisdom on relationships, consider subscribing. We'll be here, sharing more of these important conversations. Lastly, remember this. You deserve love that stays curious and keeps choosing you every single day. You are worthy of love that nurtures your heart and honors who you truly are. Never forget that. Thank you for joining me today, sending you all the warmth and understanding as you continue your journey.